My name is Tony Blank. I am a senior developer evangelist for Context.io. Show of hands, who's heard of Context.io before? Cool. For those of you who haven't, I'm going to talk about that in just a little bit. Today, I'm talking about the true value of email data. So I'm going to cover why you might want to use email data and some hurdles of historically using email data in your applications historically. So first, another show of hands. Who's heard that email is dead or dying? All right, a number of you, yeah. Let me ask you this. How many people have checked their email at least one time today? Yeah, okay. Who's checking your email right now while I'm talking? Yeah, awesome. So 3.9 billion email accounts in 2013, 4.9 billion by 2017. 183 billion messages are sent every single day. So many more email accounts are being created, and the volume of emails being sent are growing. So why is email growing? Well, we use it every day for many, many, many different kinds of activities. And this is just a very small sample of the kinds of things that people do inside of email. So why do people say that email is dead? There's a number of different reasons for that. First, email is fairly old. It's not shiny, right? It's something that's been around for many, many, many years, and it's mostly just plain text. Unless you can add some sweet animated GIFs. I don't know if you can see that one. That's awesome. It's like some GeoCities stuff going on there. I have no reason to have this slide in my deck. It's just my favorite animated GIF ever. So I'm just going to watch it for a second. Sorry. Yeah, awesome. 72% of consumers prefer to receive email communications than any other kind of form of contact from brands and businesses that they like to do business with. So while email's not a shiny new thing, and there's many other kinds of social media ways that we communicate with each other, email's still the dominant way that people interact with businesses on the internet. And the source of that is a Marketing Sherpa site. Also, email servers, it's a standard, and standards are very, very difficult to change. You have to contact every single email provider and change those old standards that were put in place many, many years ago. There's been a number of attempts like Google Wave. Show of hands, who remembers Google Wave? For those of you who don't know, it was an attempt from Google to try to kill email. And it was a super slick, I'd call it more of a tech demo. It had this real time, you could see when people are typing. It was very cool. But they didn't have an email integration to it. So it was very difficult to transition off of a standard. So that's one of the reasons why email is very sticky. Also, email protocols are very difficult to build modern applications on. So has anybody tried to connect to an email server and pull data off of it, like outside of an email client, programmatically? Has anyone tried that? A few people? Yeah, cool. So if you do that, you have to understand a couple of things about email standards. So I'll quickly go over this just to kind of set some foundations. So you've probably heard of these acronyms before. Does anybody know what POP stands for? Yeah? You know what it says? Yeah. Well, it's a post office protocol? Yeah, cool. IMAP is an Internet Message Access Protocol. And both of those are ways that email clients can fetch the data off of email servers. SMTP is Simple Message Transfer Protocol, and that deals with sending messages, not anything to do with once they're actually on the server. So the difference between POP and IMAP, I'm sure you've seen this when you used to configure your desktop mail clients. You have to pick which kind of server your email provider supports. And the difference is in POP, the state of the message is saved on the client side. So you really can only have one kind of client accessing that data because any changes that are made in that client aren't reflected in all clients. So that means that you can't really have webmail and a mobile client accessing a POP server, the state won't be reflected in each one. You won't see if it's been read or not. In IMAP, the state of the message is saved server-side. So if you want to play around with email data and use it inside of your application, IMAP is the protocol that you really want to use. So let's talk about a little bit of the issues of building on IMAP. I was really surprised to learn there's no stable primary key for an email message inside of an IMAP server, which I find pretty surprising. They do have something called a UID, but if the user moves that message to a different folder, that ID changes completely. So that's not something that you can reliably save and store in your backend or database and fetch that message again in the future. You can also fetch messages by what's called a sequence order. So that's just the order that the messages are inside of that folder. But the problem with that is that sequence order will change in the middle of a session if a new message comes in or the user moves a message in their other client that's accessing it. So it can be tricky just to fetch messages. Also in IMAP, you have to select a folder first, which means doing things like show me the 10 most recent messages that came into this email account. You'd have to actually iterate through every single folder in that account until you're confident that you have the most recent messages, if they have some auto filtering going on or something. Also, it's difficult to work with attachments. As far as the IMAP server is concerned, an attachment is just another part of the MIME body in the email. So again, trying to say, give me the 5 most recent PDFs, that might take you a long time programmatically to go through, parse all of those plain text bodies, find which ones are attachments, look at the extensions, and then return that data in an application for your user. So that's actually what value you get out of Context.io. We abstract all that complexity away. And the way that we do that is the very first step is getting the user's authentication. And then we expose a number of API resources that make fetching that data easy, so you don't have to deal with the different email servers. And also, IMAP is just one protocol. There's Exchange servers out there. There's different flavors of IMAP, and we handle all of that abstraction. So let me just do a brief aside about API design and tell a small story about a problem that we've encountered with Context.io. When abstracting away complexity out of a system that is inherently complex, you have to make some interesting API design choices. Like, how much of that do you abstract away? For instance, in IMAP, there's different flags that can be put on a message. But the red flag is the one that is predominantly used, since that's the one that marks if a message is read or unread. So do we expose all the functionality of every single possible flag that in IMAP and push that on to our customers and developers and educate them on the kinds of flexibility that exists? Or do we just call it a red resource and even abstract the flag concept away? And so this slide, Light versus 2.0, we also had to decide how much data do we cache and store. So our 2.0 API, we index all of the email headers, and that's what smooths out a lot of that complexity. We assign a stable message ID, we parse out the attachments. But then we realized that while that's great for letting our developers do things like search and filter for historical messages, there were many of our customers that really just wanted to use our webhooks. So we were storing tons and tons and tons of email headers, which makes Amazon incredibly happy. But our customers weren't actually using that index. So we built this Light API, which doesn't index anything. It's just a simple translation layer. So there's a number of different kinds of API design issues that we're working through it, and I'd be happy to talk more about that stuff later. So let's talk about the actual email data now that you have some foundations on what it takes to access and use this data. So perhaps the most obvious choice of apps you can build on top of email data are things like email productivity apps or CRM software. So Email productivity, those are things like maybe new kinds of email clients, maybe things like reminders. If I haven't gotten a response on a message, it could be things like maybe a call waiting app for an inbox. Maybe if there's 10 messages that are unread, the 11th one I probably won't respond to for 20 minutes. You could build apps like that. In CRM software, it's a fairly direct, straightforward use case of email data where you might want to share email communications with, say, a sales team or a support team and surface up those conversations inside of an application. These apps are fairly easy to build too, since you're just dealing directly with the concept of a message. You're not trying to pull anything out or extract anything out of those messages. But there's a ton of other data that's inside your users' email accounts that you can do a lot of really unique and interesting things with. And I've talked to many thousands of developers in the last couple of years as the evangelist for Context.io. And this next set of data that you can look at are things that are really a lot less obvious. And it takes a lot of people a few moments in a back and forth conversation to really kind of understand all these things. So email has a ton of information about your users. One of the things you can look at are things like purchases. So mostly online purchases, things like you bought 5 things off Amazon. But we're also starting to see brick and mortar stores asking for email addresses at checkout to receive a receipt via email. That's something that the Gap is doing, a number of clothing stores in the States. I'm not sure if that's something that's happening over here in Europe yet. Is it? Yeah, a little bit sometimes. So purchase data comes in. Other things that are related to this, things like coupons, newsletters, those kinds of business communications. In fact, we just a couple of weeks ago in Context.io shipped a beta feature where we identify which emails are receipts and return structured JSON about that purchase data from your users. So if anybody wants access to that feature, I'd be happy to turn that on. You can play with it. It's powered by our webhooks, so anytime an email comes in, you can filter it. So if it's a purchase, we'll push consistent structured data about that to your app. So come talk to me if you want access to that. I'd be happy to grant you access. So, travel information is another category of data that you can get. Things like upcoming trips, itineraries, status on different airlines or hotels, how many points they have. All of that information comes into email accounts. You can also find things like your users' interests. So you could look at things like PayPal if they're selling things on Etsy. Netflix sends emails based on rate this show that you just watched. So you can get a lot of information on your users' likes and interests. The same thing by looking at newsletters as well. You can see what kinds of, maybe what bands they follow, looking at concert tickets, and really build a fairly complete profile of things that your users enjoy. And then, of course, there's bills, utilities, credit card payment reminders, all of those things where you can understand what services and more utility bills and stuff that your users are subscribers of. Phone companies, you can find emails for win-back campaigns if they switch a mobile provider. You could figure out which brands they switch to and those kinds of things. So that's another area that you can look at. And there's also many more different categories of this kind of data. And in fact, in Context.io, our plan this year is to add in more kinds of classification to allow our developers to easily pull out each different kind of data. So it'd be very easy to, say, build applications like Google's Inbox app, where they're doing things like this already. Next up, you can look at contact information inside of email accounts. So this is who your users email. With Context.io, we actually build our contact resource from the email headers. We don't look at any kind of address book. And so it's a really accurate picture of who your users email and the volume of emails traded between your users and their contacts. You can think of email like the very first social network. And if you think about the social network stack, email is the very bottom level. You need an email address to sign up for any of the other social networks. So any of the kind of social apps that are built on Facebook or Twitter, you could treat email in the same kind of way. So natural language processing is a very natural fit with email data. If you think about it, a user's sent folder is probably the largest collection of written text that they have. So if you're looking for a lot of written samples from an individual, looking at the sent folder is a great way to get at that data. So Andy just gave a great talk on IBM's platform and Watson. And so you could do things with email data like use their personality insights. This is a newer feature from Watson, and I don't know if you can see that in the slide, but you can feed in a text sample, and Watson will break out a profile of that user. So that kind of insights would be really interesting in Helpdesk or CRM type software. It could also be used to build profiles on your user to do things like their propensity to buy if you send them a certain kind of coupon. But there's a lot of natural language processing that can be pulled out of email data. And that really is going to be a real differentiator in the marketplace for apps that are built on top of email. So I really expect to see a lot more language processing being mashed up with Context.io in the future. The one really important thing to stress when working with email data is that you have to provide value back to your users. Because the very first step in accessing their email accounts is to get their permission. And they're not going to get permission if you say, hey, I'm going to do a bunch of creepy shit with all your email data. Like, you can't do that. So you have to be sure that any kind of email data integration that you do really provides a lot of value back to your end users. So let's take a look real quick at a couple of use cases of email data. This is a company called Paribus. They actually just launched on stage at TechCrunch 2 days ago. They look at their users' receipts, and they look at the vendors to see if they have a price match guarantee. And they use natural language processing, so if the price drops, they draft an email as if it's from their user and send it to the store and get money back for free, essentially. So it's a way to protect all of your online purchases. This company called AirHelp, they look at travel receipts out of the user's email accounts for the past 3 years, see if any of the flights were delayed or canceled, and then help their users get a rebate or refund back. It works way better over here in Europe than in the States because the governments here care a lot more about the people than back in the US. So Shop.me is an app that looks at coupon data. And so they notify users if coupons are expiring. If the user happens to walk past a store that they had an offer in via email, it'll push a notification to them. It says, hey, you can pop into the Gap and use this offer. Expert is a brand new app. It's not released yet because it was built at a hackathon in New York that I was at like 3 weeks ago. They're using natural language processing over a large organization's data set. In fact, they used the Enron emails that were released as part of that trial to train their setup. And they extract topics. So they find subject matter experts within large organizations and put a search engine on top of it to help these large companies find the experts. So you could type in big data and find that. And I'd just like to mention this because I haven't actually seen this use case, but I think it's really valuable. Any kind of app that's working in an organization, you could use email data to get really fast user onboarding. So think about things like maybe mashing up Slack's API with Context.io to do things like automatically create rooms across an organization, invite people who are commonly talking via email to a new kind of internal communications platform. You could also do something like mash up Spotify's API with email data, looking at things like concert tickets and band newsletters to automatically make playlists for new Spotify users. And there's many more kinds of things where you can save your users a lot of time and effort by asking them to provide access to their email accounts. And this is just scratching the surface of the kinds of apps you can build on top of email data. Now that there's APIs that make accessing this data easy, they make it very accessible, the market really is wide open for innovation. So I think the next couple of years are going to be very exciting in this space. In fact, we are trying to increase this velocity by holding a Context.io App Challenge Hackathon that we are partnering up with the Challenge Post Hackathon platform. We're launching it next Tuesday, May 12th. It's going all summer through September 1st, and we're giving away $125,000 in prizes. And we have a number of celeb VC judges that will be the panel of judges for the hackathon. We have Fred Wilson, Brad Feld, David Cohen, and our CEO, Matt Blumberg, who wrote the book Startup CEO you might be familiar with. So that is all the time that I have, I believe. So if there's any questions, I'd be happy to take them. Thank you.
So $125,000, right?
That's correct, yeah.
With email data and NLP and machine learning and some technology, yeah?
Yeah. That's correct.
So
that's correct.
This is money, right?
Yeah.
Any question on email data? There.
Yeah, one thing is, I mean, email is also a lot of private communication happens there. So I imagine that a lot of users would be afraid to expose access to all this to third-party apps through another third-party service. So what are the possibilities to limit the access on email?
Yeah, that's certainly, privacy is a huge concern around email. So at Context.io, we have a very firm policy where all of our customers must have a specific language in their terms of service and their privacy policy explaining to their users in a very transparent way exactly what email data is being used in the application, why they need to provide access, and then the value that they get back from it. Unfortunately, email protocols are an all or nothing thing. There's no way to get granular permissions. That's something that we've really talked about internally, building the ability for our API key holders to self-limit their API keys. So they could say to their customers, we can only access email headers and PDFs, if say it's maybe a document management software or something. But overall, the willingness of users to grant that access is actually higher than what I would have originally thought. And I think that speaks to the problem that email really is, or rather not email, but email clients. Anything beneath the fold is lost, typically. And so there is a really strong demand from users to help them make sense of all this data. And what it really comes down to, there's a sliding scale between a person's willingness to share and trust a third party. And so the more useful the app is, the more willing they are to share. So if you build an app on top of email, you really want to make sure that the value proposition is very clear to the user. But that's certainly a great point. Any more questions?
So I have one question on email data and
Sure.
maybe machine learning. So I will try to ask the question to the audience, not making bias into the question. So who has already clicked on a Google ad inside Gmail? Okay, really few people. So I raised, but I never already. So it was just I didn't know. So yeah, actually, there's a lot of value in email data, but for advertisements, it's true that sometimes it works when you have a lawyer email, so they say, hey, find a new lawyer or whatever. But for all the applications you've seen, like for example, all the flights, the flights from, or for example, the coupons, yeah, I see a lot of value, and I see now like why using NLP and machine learning could work for these. But for advertisements, I don't know the turnover of Google. It's probably of Gmail. It's probably high. But yes. So do you have any idea why it's or maybe why it doesn't work? At least for us, right?
Well, you know, I've seen some numbers on the well, and again, going back to that one slide on the number of people that prefer to receive communications via email. You know, I really think that we're going to see a lot of the person-to-person communications really fall down and decrease. But I think that those business communications are increasing, and I think email is going to be the way to receive those communications and those receipts. So as far as using it for advertising, I mean that's a whole industry surrounding email marketing and best practices, and there's a whole lot of effort going on in that space. And that's actually a large part of what our parent company ReturnPath does. And so what they do is they help email marketers with manage that problem. Be sure that the emails that they do send out as newsletters or advertisements have a lot of value for the end users. And very successful email campaigns, they do have a lot of value. You know, those coupons and offers and, hey, we have a new feature, those are things that the customers really do want to hear about. So I think that a well-done marketing campaign or advertising campaign via email really has a lot of value to users in the end. And of course, one that's awful is just awful. So.
And does the principal, you know, Gmail has like 3 categories, like principal, social networks, and promotions. So do you see like more value in each, you know, way to extract data from one of each, or?
Yeah. I mean, I think that what Google is trying to do with those categories is interesting. They're trying to solve that problem of helping their users make more sense out of all of the volume of messages that come in. But if you think about it, I mean, that's just one application. That's one company's attempt to do it. So you know, so I encourage everybody in this room to you know, take on Gmail and try to solve that problem in maybe a better way or in a different way that might help out the users you know, more than having 3 categories.
Okay. Yeah. Question? Yep. Okay.
So why does Context.io stick with email as opposed to extending its reach into social media like everybody else does? All the things. Wouldn't that also lend itself to the abstractions that you're doing for contacts and for threads and stuff like that?
Sure, yeah. I mean, we do get that request from customers a lot. And really the real answer is that abstracting email away, the complexity from email is just a very, very large, difficult problem. So I don't see us really moving into that space. There's many other great APIs out there that do aggregations and social media and calendaring and those kinds of things that you might want to mash email data up with. And so our preference is to work with our API peers and share customers around. Thank you very much. Thank you.